well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. I want to welcome you to my channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects. Really excited because we're having Stephen Bassett on for the third time. But before we get to that, let me remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe and like button. While you're here, I'll go ahead and bring Steve on now. Hey, Steve, good to have you on.
Good to be back. Third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm. I told you it's not a series unless we have three. And so now this is a series. It's kind of like Star Wars, you know?
Absolutely.
And stuff. But so excited to have you here. 2024 has kind of been one of those unpredictable years so far. There's a lot promised, but we really don't know a lot at this point. Now, we had that secret SCIF meeting with closed one, I guess you'd call it. But anyway, we weren't supposed to get any information where they talked to the ICIG Thomas Moheim. Did we find out anything on that, Steve?
No.
Did anything leak out on your end?
No. The only thing that was really important about the briefing in a SCIF of what amounts to the first ever UAP task force, which is quite notable. Never been one, right? And I think it started off with 6. It's now got more members. The leader of this task force appears to be Tim Burchett, who has led the House on this issue now for some time, and to his great benefit. And he's a hero, no question about it. They got a briefing from the IG of the intelligence community. That's never happened before. The intelligence community's inspector general is briefing members of Congress who just happened to be part of the first UAP caucus on this subject. That in and of itself, if I could go back in the past, say 40 years, and talk to some of my colleagues, some of them dead and gone, and told them this would happen, and they wouldn't believe me. So that's what's important. Okay. Now, why did he do it? He didn't do it so that he could reveal to them some super special stuff.
Right.
No. They apparently did ask him a number of questions he couldn't answer, which is not surprising. It's the same thing that happened in the other briefing they got. So they came out somewhat disappointed, but I think some of them appreciated that they got the briefing at all. And so, but in general, most of them were like, yeah, we're still not getting our answers and so forth. And we want the truth. And then they're giving these press conferences on the steps of the Capitol and saying, we want to get to the truth of this how. Because, hey, so do I. And so do my colleagues for now 76 years. So, but why did he give the briefing? He gave the briefing because in terms of the script, and I use this term loosely, the script that's underway that we're having to follow, it's like a 3-act play, and we're in the near the end of the 3rd act, which leads up to the disclosure event, the confirmation event by the president. David Grush was not supposed to happen. They didn't count on it. I'm not saying that they didn't see it coming. I mean, they knew that it could happen, I believe, a number of people. But even then, coming out as a whistleblower is no trivial thing. And he may have mentioned this to some inside people. I'm getting upset. I may do that. Probably not. So whatever. In general, they didn't see it. They didn't see it coming. And so he really changed the equation in a dramatic way because ahead of the president confirming we have non-human tech and non-human bodies, David Grush confirmed it. Not only in an interview to Ross Coulthart and an interview with Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal, but then that was on the 5th of June. But then on the 26th of July, he came in and did it under oath. So this created a serious problem for those that are trying to manage what we'll call the end of the truth embargo in a way that is responsible and organized and somewhat reasonably transparent, preparing for disclosure, because he kind of jumped the gun. All right.
Can I ask
a
quick question?
Burchett is going out there and saying, we're not happy. Burchett goes on News Nation and says there are extraterrestrials here. This is a problem. So in order to sort of to let them know that they are being paid attention to. You give them a briefing from the Inspector General, okay? And that makes them feel like, oh, we're being heard. Do you tell them much? No, you don't, because you're not ready to go there, right? So they probably ask him, Inspector General Moheim, David Grush said that he knew the locations of where these crash vehicles were. And I'm pretty sure he presented that to Inspector General. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure that he presented that to you when he approached you, Moheim, with his complaint well back, right? Can you tell us the locations? And the answer was going to be, I can't discuss that. Just because they're in a SCIF, right? A secured compartmented information facility. Just because they're in a SCIF doesn't mean, oh, we can talk about anything. No. And so he didn't. But he at least gave them the respect. That's what that was all about. And to the average person, they probably going, what the hell is going on? But I have the luxury of been paying attention to this. And so it's a positive thing. I don't care what was said or not said in that briefing. It is a significant marker.
It seemed like when I was watching the reaction, now you have a different vantage point being in DC, but on the different programs and podcasts, and I listened to the different representatives coming out of that meeting, it seemed more positive than negative. There seemed to be one that was really like, well, we didn't learn anything, really, really frustrated. And maybe some of the others were as well. But most of the ones I saw on that day when they were commenting on it seemed pretty positive. And the other question I have for you is, we talked about Thomas Moheim. Do you think he's gotten to the bottom of some of this stuff? As far as the complaints, do you think he's truly investigated them?
When you say what is it that you're asking that he investigated?
The claims, the fact that David Grush put this complaint about the very things you were talking about, actual locations where this stuff's taking place, that this stuff's taking place behind, I don't know exactly what the complaint said word for word, but it's the idea that there are these legacy programs going on. Do you think he had the ability to go and investigate those? And did he?
Probably not. The purpose of the appeal, not appeal, but the purpose of the complaint was to get relief from harassment that David Grush was receiving internally within, I guess, a UAP task force, and maybe the near surround, which means, one, that the reason that he's getting harassed is righteous. Okay, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do that you can get harassed about, like I don't know, watching porn during lunch, whatever. So that's not enough to put a complaint into an IG. You put it in because you're doing your job the way it's supposed to be, and people are not happy about you doing your job. And so the reason for that complaint was to get that cleared up, and it was cleared. It was agreed to that he was being improperly harassed. Now, my understanding is, in order for this to happen, he had to tell the IG the information that he had passed on, I believe, to the Senate Intel Committee, which is what triggered the harassment in the first place. All right. So just because he tells the IG that, yeah, I got inside information from people, firsthand people about having crashed vehicles, that doesn't mean that the IG is going to then start investigating that. That's not his job. The job is oversight. The investigation comes from elsewhere, right? By and large. I'm not saying that the IG couldn't set up something like that. The IG can do a number of things, but that's not, I think, the appropriate office to start investigating the truth embargo writ large. That is for the Congress, the UAP review board, the kind of things that Chuck Schumer was trying to put into law. And so, but he may know. He may at least know that Grush was told we have vehicles, right? And he may have made a few calls to say, is that true? I don't know. All I can say is, if there weren't crash vehicles and non-human bodies in the hands of the United States government, none of what you see happening would be happening at all. And so the effect of all this is that non-formal confirmation of the extraterrestrial presence, non-human tech. I'm going to use extraterrestrial until somebody absolutely provides solid proof that they're from another dimension or the future, is pretty much out there, which is a problem because the president hasn't confirmed it yet. So it's kind of hanging in limbo, and I'm doing my best to help them get out of limbo. And I'm happy to talk to anybody on the Hill or anybody at the major news entities to sort of sort this out for them. But so far, I'm not getting any calls.
Okay. So how does that work as far as, with Paradigm Research Group? Do you write letters, make phone calls? How do you reach out and try to impact disclosure? Maybe some of our viewers may not be aware of that kind of. Obviously you're out doing podcasts, and I'll tell you what, I have the utmost respect for you because you are definitely working overtime to try to help in this truth embargo.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Look like?
Well, first of all, I'm a communicator.
Mm-hmm.
That's my principle. Where all activists are basically communicators. If you're an activist, right, you have to be a communicator. There are activists that work behind the scenes in some large organizations, like some big environmental activist movements, and their job is to take care of this and that. But if you're a frontline person, your job is a communicator. And by communicator, I mean being able to convey what needs to be known to the media and to the public, everybody in the public, not just, a certain group, a special group. And that's the first and foremost thing that I do. I have probably done more interviews on this subject than anybody living or dead. I could be wrong. It's approaching, it's somewhere in the 1,500 level. And the reason I know that is that I log them in on my site. And there is a media section on my site where I've listed the speaking engagements going all the way back to 1997 or 8. But there's some that I've missed. There's some that are not in there, but it's a big list. And so I've spent a lot of time trying to communicate this. I've also done countless conferences and so forth. So I'm a communicator. I have approached the press many times. I've helped generate hundreds of articles. If you go to my website, under where is that? It's the print media archive under resources. The website is paradigmresearchgroup.org.
Right.
There are what I curate that. In other words, I go through thousands and thousands of media pieces that have to do with the UAP, ET disclosure, and so forth. I don't link up to small stuff, fringe stuff, or silly stuff. I curate substantive articles. There's no bias. If it's a skeptic piece, I put it up. But if it's got some substance and it's relatively real journalism, I put it up, and I curate from thousands of articles. Well, last year, 1,900 articles are now linked up there for 2023. That's the greatest ever since I started doing this. The total number of articles is now over 15,000. We're on a pace to do 2,000 articles this year. And so I have played a role in helping to generate that amount of press. But also, in another part of the site, and I think it's under About, and it's PRG media coverage, I think is the link under About in my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org. You will see the number of articles that have been written that refer to Paradigm Research Group or me.
Wow.
It's 600. So that's one way that I am an activist. All right. I have not spent much time on the Hill talking to people because up until recently it was pointless.
Right.
Just we're going to talk to you. Or they'd assign an intern, some 20-year-old volunteer, whatever, and they'd give you the basic meeting and you never hear from them. Now that's changing. But I have been in LA working on media projects, and so I was sort of off the grid, and then things really took off here. And so a lot of my colleagues are up there and they're all over the Hill, and that's great. And interviews are being done and so forth. You're seeing some docs. Again, I'm hardly the only activist now. I'm certainly not the only one registered as a lobbyist. There are quite a few, but I'm working my way back up on the Hill. Have no fear. And this is pretty much the essence of my work. And I follow it right now. The other thing I want to say about this is I have colleagues that go granular on this. I have colleagues that do broad research across the scale of the issue. I have colleagues that do absolutely intense granular research on particular sites, or cases rather. I've got, a bunch of books behind me that are like that. Most of them,
Seen
though,
that library.
yeah, they stopped at 2000 because I ran out of space, and then everything went, not 2000? What was it? Yeah, maybe 2002. Everything's gone digital, right? So I don't collect books anymore. I think I'd like to, but just that right there are people that have gone into minute detail in every case. I mean, the research has been done in the last 76 years by regular citizens is voluminous. It's vast, and most of it will be soon confirmed. The amount of research done by credentialed, tenured professors at universities is virtually nothing. Okay, so that's the work, and these people have gone granular. That's not my job. My job is to watch the overall picture, what's happening in the larger arena, particularly in the politics, social media as well, which I'm on social media extensively, to try to get an overall sense of where things are going and then convey that to others. Right? I'm not in the job of reproving Roswell, which has been thoroughly proven. I'm in the job of being able to explain to people what is going on. And so sometimes they refer to it as taking the view from 30,000 feet. Maybe it's 15,000 for me. I don't know. But that's kind of what I do as a communicator. And believe me, I would do more. There's a lot more I could do. But I've not had the resources for that, because I was never really good at making money. Some of my colleagues have been better at that. However, Paradigm Research Group is virtually about to, within a day or two, is going to file for nonprofit status for the first time. It'll be probably active within 10 days. And then for the first time, I'm going to be seeking donations for PRG, which will be reconstituted as a think tank. And of course, all of these donations will be tax deductible. And so if I'm able to raise substantial resources, I definitely intend to expand the spectrum of activities and things I can do, like putting on another X conference, which I've been wanting to do for years, things like that. So look for me pretty soon, out there with a cup going, hey, please donate to Paradigm Research Group. You get a tax deduction.
Well, your credentials are well known. And I think one of the biggest things you did was the 2013 citizen, wasn't 2013 the citizen hearings? And I was going to ask you about, what's that?
Yeah, on disclosure, citizen on disclosure.
Right. And I heard you talking about what's taking place in DC now, and that was pretty big. In 2013, that was big. I mean, I think probably a lot of people felt like we were on our way to disclosure, not realizing that here we are 11 years later and we're still fighting for that. But that was big. And so your credentials are out there. I was just trying to get the nuts and bolts so people would understand exactly what your position is. Your position isn't to go in and look at one specific incident. You look at the whole, and then you bring it all together.
I am a disclosure advocate. Yeah, I'm a disclosure advocate. My job is to advocate for and get disclosure, confirmation of the extraterrestrial presence from the President of the United States, hopefully before another head of state does it first.
Okay. I got one other thing I want to add, and I think people need to hear this because I know you're hard on it after talking to you several times now and discussing this. The reason you want disclosure, or to end this truth embargo, as you call it, isn't just so that we can prove once and for all that alien life is visiting us, but isn't it also because you kind of feel like this might be humankind's best last chance? Isn't that part of it, at least?
Yeah, you could almost phrase it that, but let me clarify. The reason for disclosure is not to prove the ET presence. It's already proven many times over. All right, so it's been proven. The disclosure is the confirmation of that proof by the president, meaning it gives it, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess he's authenticating it when he does that. It's the confirmation, so that people will then realize, yeah, we've got the proof. It's always been there. Now let's really go look at it. So that's what that's about. Now, I can go on for length. You know about this. I'm not going to do that. I've done it many times, but I'll try to to encapsulate it as best as possible. One, this whole 76 years in which the UFO UAP issue has clearly exploded, developed, and moved forward in ways that it never had before. I can't speak about ancient times. I'm sure it was pride of interesting. I'm pretty sure ETs were engaging humans way back. Have no idea what that was like, but it was nothing like today. This is totally different, unique, special. But this is not just, oh, what the hell? Let's go visit Earth. Let's do some things. No. There is an agenda here. The ETs have an agenda without question. Now, there are a lot of people that have come forward with elaborate explanations of what that agenda is. No problem. And I have my view. They have their view. We don't know for certain, but I'm comfortable with my view. And so, and I'll get to that in a second, but there is an agenda and there is a time frame and there is a reason for this. That's the first point. Second point, whether or not the ETs are here or not, the situation regarding human society is dire. Now, people say, wow, everybody's been saying that forever. Go back thousands of years. Everybody was saying, oh, it's all going to go to hell. It's coming to the end of the world, blah, 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 blah. I get it. But it wasn't the end of the world. There were people near the end of times in Rome are going, Rome is falling apart. Rome is going to be gone. Well, they were right. This is bigger than that. We are in a situation now where the human race, 8 billion strong, for whatever reason, we felt we needed 8 billion people, on our way to 9 billion, on a planet that is the same size it was when there was only a couple of million of us, in an extremely advanced civilization that generates magnitudes more impact on the environment than humans just 200 years ago. And then, of course, the weaponization of tech and so forth, the geopolitics, things are in terrible shape. I mean, it's just awful. And the problems are mounting at a pace that most people can't even understand, let alone keep up with it. And so we are crossing points of no return. We're reaching key thresholds. We're closer to nuclear war than ever. We're at risk of biological war. We're headed for possibly war in space. We have genocides going on a regular basis. The environment is under enormous pressure. So we're in real big trouble. I mean, I know that people have always felt there's problems in the world, but now there really are worldwide problems. It's not a conjecture. And one of the reasons, and this is a good thing, that we know about this is because we have mass global communications. And so whatever's happening anywhere in the world, we can generally find out about it. And so we're in deep trouble. And the number one issue is not, Florida, being underwater. That would be bad. Or even a major zoonotic plague that maybe kills not just a few million, it might kill 100 million. That would be bad too. The number one problem is nuclear war. Absolutely. And we have been dancing on that missile silo for some years now, 70 years. And every year it gets worse and worse. As of right now, we are 90 seconds to midnight on the doomsday clock, which is the closest ever. They put it there a while back and they just restated it and said, we're not going to go closer, but we're keeping it at 90 because the situation out there is not good at all. A nuclear war is ball game for human civilization. There will be survivors. Most of them will wish they were dead. And it will be a long time before there is a viable civilization and before that civilization is what we'll call safe. It's going to be a catastrophe of incomprehensible proportions. And it could happen tomorrow. It could happen while I'm speaking right now. And we've gotten so used to that. It's like people that work on these tall buildings where they're up there walking on beams and everything, right? And they're able to do it because they've gotten so used to it that the fear's gone and they just got to walk around. But then one day they're careless and they step off and boom, they're dead. We've gotten so used to it, we take it for granted. But the fact is that we are on the verge of destruction all the time. This is a big problem. And how much is being done to solve it? Practically nothing. Okay, so Given that, right, I've put the two together. Logically, on a basis of common sense, there is a connection. It begins with the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, followed by a much more aggressive activity of the ETs. It continues with ETs being seen over multiple nuclear facilities. It continues with ETs actually coming down and turning off nuclear weapons. It continues with ETs putting messages in the heads of contactees while they're in their possession of destruction in the future, implying that you don't want to go there, right? Not predicting the future per se, not showing them the future, but rather saying, this is what it's going to look like if you guys don't get it right. They even land next to schoolyards repeatedly and put these images in the heads of kids who are all grown up now and probably thinking we ought to do something about this. All of this adds up to the fact that there is a massive connection between the ET presence and their activity over the last 77 years and the nuclear issue, which is the ultimate issue, ultimate threat to the human race, not extraterrestrials, nuclear weapons. And so I have concluded that the disclosure process, it leading to confirmation worldwide, is essential for the open contact that would shortly follow thereafter, which is then obviously a door opening to the possibility within communication with ETs directly of dealing with the nukes, meaning they're going to say, get rid of them, something like that. Okay, so that's basic, and I believe that is true, but why now? I mean, why not down the line? Okay, well, there's two time factors here, okay? Obviously, we would like to have this happen before we have a nuclear war and not get and try to do nuclear weapons reduction after a nuclear war, though a nuclear war would certainly reduce the stockpiles. So obviously, that's one time factor. But that's primarily one on our side. Is there a time factor on the ET side? In other words, are they willing to wait indefinitely for us to finally acknowledge their presence and open up to the possibility of open contact? No. What on earth would be the reason why ETs would have a time frame on this? And I think the answer is pretty clear. If you look deep enough into our present physics, it's not that hard to find evidence and work, even if you're not a physicist and can't read equations. I have a degree in physics. I can't read equations anymore. But it's not that hard to find, how would you say, not instances, but evidence for theoretical physics working to solving the interstellar travel problem, which is basically solving the relativity problem. And we're closing in on it. And am I surprised? No. I believe the ETs are interstellar. If they're interstellar, then obviously you can be interstellar. I mean, it's just common sense. And so I think we're close. I really do. And if we develop interstellar craft, given how dangerous we are to ourselves, given how much we love our weapons, we will almost certainly take those weapons and go into space with them. And that is not going to be allowed. And so that is the time frame for the ETs. All of this has got to get done before we build those starships. And I think that means just as far as I think they're concerned, now is fine. 10 years from now is fine, except we might have that nuclear war. So there's two time frames here, but both of them will allow for disclosure tomorrow. And that's my thinking on this, compacted substantially.
One of the challenges, because I feel very much like you do, but other people have stories, and I don't ever want to dismiss their stories and say that they're not real, because I believe they are. But negative stories like abduction stories, and some of them are, they have a positive view of ET, some who don't. So one of the things when I try to talk to people about this is to try to unpack the idea that we're probably not talking about just one species or just one phenomenon, but that it's many things. And so I was trying to figure out, how do you talk to somebody and help them understand that disclosure is going to be good once we get open contact, once it'll change humanity. But those who are setting with these negative experiences, and I've often postulated that maybe it's two different things, because I do believe there's a spiritual world and I believe there's a physical world, and maybe some of the spiritual and the physical are being conflated, and maybe some of these experiences are not extraterrestrials, but maybe there's some kind of dark evil being that they're experiencing, and there's multiple other possibilities. But how do we move people to the point where they look at disclosure as a good thing and not just, okay, we want to know, and once we know, it's going to be all bad? How do we change the opinion of people like that, Steve?
I'm a little reluctant to talk about changing people's opinion. It's a little aggressive. My job is to put out information, to give people some understanding of what's going on, to give them my view on it, and then they'll decide what they're going to think about it. I'm not trying to convert people. Right? And you generally you will not see me talking that way. It might happen, but it's not intentional. That's not my job. My job is to give them information, right? And in that respect, and also I'm a pretty basic guy, called a nuts and bolts guy. In other words, my universe is relatively defined. It's not too exotic. I'm not saying that there aren't exotic aspects to our world. I'm just saying that I'm trying to stay with the stuff that's pretty much basically understood or relatively easily to project. And in this world, what I tell people, and so the universe that I am living in, is I believe there are two things going on right now at the same time. Now, it may be that the collective, meaning all of the groups all of the ETs that are dealing with this, and there's more than one kind, 4, 5, 6, roughly, and which could be more, but 4, 5, 6 generally are turning up. That the collective, all of them together, are doing two things at the same time. One of these is what we'll call the disclosure process, that they're advancing, and this engagement regarding our fate, our future. And obviously they have some concern that we don't destroy ourselves. Perfectly reasonable, right? Humans would feel, I think, a similar way. And there's something else going on. It's pretty much separate. And that is work that is for their benefit. Probably. Might be benefiting us, but at minimum it is for their benefit. And this work is pretty much separate. So we divide it into two parts. And this work is very much centered on genetics. Now, it's also possible that a couple of the ETs are pretty much the ones that are dealing with this nuke issue and our future. And there are some others that could give a damn about our future, but they're doing the genetics. I don't know. But my gut tells me they're probably all pretty much on the same page. And so if you're involved in the genetic stuff, obviously you're having a different experience than somebody that isn't. I'm not a contactee, right?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at right there.
Yeah. So if you're having a different experience, and obviously it's in many cases not fun at all. It's not good. Now, how you think of it is each individual has got to deal with it based on their own background and knowledge and so forth. Some can appreciate it, meaning whatever you're doing, you obviously need to do it. It's kind of uncomfortable for me, but I'm I can live with this. Others, it's absolutely terrifying. They hate it. They get traumatized. They suffer from PTSD, which is one of the reasons that the ETs blank the memories of people in most of, at least certainly in the earlier days, less so now, I think, but so that there's less trauma. Except that the human being doesn't quite work that way. I mean, you can suppress their conscious memory of something, but it sits in the subconscious where it's doing damage down there. But in any event, there's negative consequences to people who are contactees. And that is not good. It's not desirable. But the number of contactees is still a small percentage of the population of this planet. it may only be 1% of the population. Now, 1% of the population, see, 10% is 800 million, 1% is 80 million. It could be as little as 0.1% or less. Mm-hmm. So the vast majority of all people are not having this experience, but some are. Do we try to project the discomfort and the offensiveness of that aspect of this phenomena to the entire phenomena?
That's a good point.
I would say don't do that, right? Don't do that. But so, you must respect their experiences. But right. Because somebody is being taken and there's genetic work being done on them, that doesn't mean that the entire ET presence and his agenda is evil or whatever else. No, it's probably no more evil than the genetic work we do on animals on our planet and even on human beings, though generally you got to get permission. It's not that different, but it's certainly offensive because it's quite traumatic.
So would that be comparable to, I've had good experience with police officers, but I've also had a bad one. But I don't look at all police officers based on that one experience that was negative. I realize that most of the police officers are good people. And so is that somewhat similar to what you're saying? Just don't, paint it with a wide brush or something like that, but yet still respecting the individual experiences that were.
It's a little more along this line. It's more like this. You've got a bunch of police officers and on occasion, they really treat you awful. But most of the time, the same police officers are just fine. It's like that, right? It's not like there's bad ETs and good ETs. There's just ETs, and they're doing two things here at the same time. There may be some more. There may be some surveillance stuff, whatever, keeping track. But these are what I would call sub motives. The fundamental motives have to do with genetic work and addressing the problem posed by the weaponization of technology on this planet, which puts the entire planet at risk and ultimately could put them at risk if they allow us to reach the point of interstellar travel without getting our act together, right? And that's how I boiled it down. I mean, it seems a little simplistic, but I'm just following some basic common sense without getting into elaborate explanations for something. It falls literally right out of the evidence that we have without having to add anything too exotic. And that's where I'm at, though I'm certainly open at all times to new information.
So the question I think some might have on that is the onus seems to be on us. Is it kind of like it fits into some kind of a scenario? Why is it so important that we get there? Is it part of our species development? Is that why they put it on us? Or is there like a breaking point for species and you either overcome it or you destroy yourselves? Is that why the onus is on us to bring about disclosure and stuff like that? Because the question I know that somebody's got to have on their mind right now is why don't they just come out and just show themselves? Why don't they just come out and do disclosure on their part, confirmation on their part?
They do show themselves all the time, and we're seeing them all the time, and the contactees see them on a regular basis. So it's what you're saying is why don't they go into full out open contact? Come on down, let's talk. That's a reasonable question. Obviously, that's not the way they do it. Right. Until we have interstellar travel, we're not a threat to them. And with respect to the nuclear weapons, well, we're only a threat to ourselves. So the question is, I'd phrase it this way. Why don't the ETs go work a little harder to make it virtually impossible for any government, particularly a government like the United States, which leads the Western democracies and has probably the most powerful nation in the world, go a little bit harder to ensure the president is going to get out there and say, hey, there's ETs here? And that's a valid question. One reason would be and could be, and this is brought up all the time, because they're not worried about us doing a nuclear war, because if we get stupid enough to do that and those things get launched, they'll just flick them away, right? They'll take care of them, right? They'll never explode. They'll never hit the ground. And then open contact would follow that, meaning, okay, you guys, Jesus Christ, you're so stupid, but hey, we stopped that. Now let's talk. That's possible. That is not a bet I want to make. That's an all-in bet. If you lose the bet, you lose everything. You're out of the game. All right. So the other possibility is that the other possibility is based somewhat on the fact that we're not the only species that's gone through this. There have been countless civilizations throughout our galaxy for millions of years that have gone through the whole thing. They evolved from worms or whatever the hell, and eventually they become sentient. They got fingers, they're making computers and whatever else. They figure out atomic physics. The physics is the same all over the universe. And if you've got a water planet and all you got are really smart fish, no, you're not going to end up with nuclear bombs. But any planet, a Earth-type planet that allows the kind of evolution we have, in many cases, not all cases, is going to end up with our situation. So this is not the first time they've probably confronted this. We've been there before. All right. So their calculation is this, that the way this should be done is a fairly, not too long, but a reasonable ramp up in which the world population becomes increasingly aware of their presence, starts to deal with it, what have you, and then actually formally acknowledges it. It becomes a given. Everybody knows it's true, and perhaps starts brushing up on the subject. In other words, all the world leaders start reading the books. They pull out their, Richard Dolan books, read them all. Maybe go watch his podcast. I have plenty of other colleagues. There's plenty to read and plenty to know. And they get up to speed on it, and we're kind of on top of this, and then open contact. That may be, from their point of view, the way it should be done. And so that is their preference. And that is why they have not intervened and forced the action. That's the other explanation that I have. I don't have another one. It's also possible. There is a third possibility that they're prepared to play the game out the way it's going now. And if we have a nuclear war and set ourselves back hundreds, if not 1,000 years, then our risk to them drops down to nearly zero. And so we're no longer a potential threat, and they just move on. Okay. We've had our war. Hey, you're all screwed up now, but you're not a threat to us. So we're going to move on. You could have disclosed. You could have done the right thing. You didn't. What can we say? We're not going to tell you what to do. So that's the third possibility. So there are really three. I can't think of a fourth for sure. Let's hope it's not the third. I hope it's the second one.
Yeah. Okay. Couple of other things I wanted to bring up is remind me of Wikigate. We'll save that for towards the end. But what do you see happening now? Now, Lou and others have talked about, Lou specifically has talked about something happening early in 2024 to mid 2024, and he didn't define what that is. Very cryptic, but something's going to happen. Are you seeing anything, hearing anything, any idea? Because I know, Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, people are very, very impatient, and it's like a roller coaster for them. And I often try to tell them, it's just like, don't get on the roller coaster. Try to stay even keel as you can. But we've become a nation where we want what we want, and we want it now. And when something, especially with the news, the 24-hour news, everything's hitting us fast. And so when there's any downtime or when things slow down a little bit on X and this, whole phenomena, it just people start getting antsy. And so sure. I'm just curious, are you hearing anything, something maybe of hope that we can give some of those that are impatient, wanting something to be encouraged by?
No, I'm all about hope.
Okay.
I'm the eternal optimist, Yeah. Well, here's the situation. There's always something going to be happening, I assure you. There's so much in the works that things are going to be happening. So predicting something's going to happen is guaranteed. But I'm not an insider. I don't have intel officers with high classified clearance calling me up on, Signal or something and tipping me off. I've never had that. That's not the way I operate. And so I have no inside information that a specific thing is going to happen. I can tell you what's supposed to happen next, could happen next, and may very well happen next. And I will in a second. But there are people that don't have inside information. And it's clear who they are. And it's very possible that those people have been tipped that something is in the works and it's going to happen even in a certain month. So if they come out and say something like that, I don't dismiss it. Right. But I can't confirm it or deny it. Right? But you pay attention, right? In terms of what is supposed to happen next, I've been harping on this for some time now. What's supposed to happen next, based on all the things that have been put in place, is the Senate Intel, which started the engagement of this issue by Congress, has got to have a hearing that has been promised and long overdue for 15 to 20 of the several dozen witnesses that have come forward ready to testify. I mean, important witnesses. They have been interviewed in one or more times. They are substantive. They are mostly military. They're like Grush. There's a lot of Grushes out there. And at any time, they could hold a hearing for 15 to 20 of them. And if they hold those hearings over about a week is all we'll need, morning and afternoon sessions, like they did with the January 6 hearings, which were very impressive, very long and so forth. The issue is kind of important. Our issue was like maybe 1,000 times more important. The truth embargo is toast. It just blows it up. It's gone. It's done. But confirmation hasn't happened. But it will happen. Those hearings make it possible for the president to, in a nonpartisan way, in an appropriate way, respond to what has been revealed to the public through this testimony. And upon discussions and conferring with the top people in his administration, come forward and confirm that if you think that evidence confirms we have an ET presence, you would be right. It's clear we do have an ET presence or a non-human presence, whatever, and that's disclosure. So what's supposed to happen next is the Senate Intelligence Committee hearings. Now, I wish that I had not been off the field out in Los Angeles when things really got going and had maybe developed some access on the Hill. I mean, I've got some requests in to meet. I did have a chat with Tim Burchett, but I haven't had a chance to have a meeting with him. I would like to be talking about this with actual members up there to give them my perspective, which I don't think they're getting from anybody else. But the perspective that I would convey is that there are some very powerful reasons why we need those hearings now, right? And that's what's supposed to happen and needs to happen. And there are two fundamental reasons for this. The first is simple. We could have a nuclear war at any time. Given the recent developments, the possibility of a non-state operator terrorist group who just happen to get their hands on a nuke. I'm not some big-ass nuke. I'm talking about just a nuke. Could be modest. Drive it downtown some city in a van, blow it up. Could happen at any time. And in the aftermath of something like that, the confusion will be profound. Everybody will go on DEFCON 2, and anything could happen. We could have a nuclear war. Or somebody's going to lob a nuke shell in Ukraine, whatever. It could happen at any time. Let's get disclosure out of the way. Let's get that done first. Why? Because whatever is coming, invasion of Taiwan, a nuke event in Ukraine, terrorist attack, whatever is coming, it's far better that it happen in the post-disclosure world than in the pre-disclosure world. Why? Because in the post-disclosure world, and let me preface it with this, and a lot of people know this, it's kind of one of these sagacious kind of understandings that I think you finally learn at some point in your life, that how well your life goes, and it's true for countries, how well a country's existence goes is less about what happens to you or to the country, but how you react to what happens to you. Right. Usually it's the reaction that does the most damage. And so the point I'm making is that if something really awful even more awful than we've seen lately, happens, but it's in the post-disclosure world. It will be in a world where the worldview has changed and shifted, and people are thinking in new ways. And the reaction to that event may be more appropriate, less destructive. We know exactly how the reaction is going to be in the pre-disclosure world. And there's an example of that going on right now. So that's the first reason. Now, this is a non-trivial point, and it's not easy. Not everybody is going to go, oh, yeah, I get that. No, this is it's a complex point. Now, the second reason is more nuts and bolts and more local. We're about to go through one of the most bizarre, weird elections of all time. It's going to be awful in so many ways. And yet it could be one of the most extraordinary elections of our time. How? Simple. If the president of the United States confirms the extraterrestrial presence in early February, there's been a couple of primaries, no big deal. What that means is that every one of the 2,000 candidates who want to be a senator or a governor or a representative, about 2,000 candidates will be on the ballot, easy. Every one of them will be campaigning in the post-disclosure world. They will have time to go read some of these books back here, watch some YouTube videos, watch some podcasts, and kind of get up to speed a little bit. Kind of, whoa, okay. Oh, ET presence, yeah. And was there a presence back in 47? Yeah. Was Roswell a ET craft? Yeah. And so forth. And get up to speed. And actually address the issue as they're trying to seek the votes of their citizens. And speak intelligently to it. And one of the most valuable aspects of that is this is an absolutely nonpartisan issue. And so all of those candidates will pretty much be approaching it from a nonpartisan point of view. They'll be able to talk about it without having to say stupid things just to get themselves elected or to attack their opposition. And so suddenly the election becomes really profound and fascinating. And ultimately what we get in January of 2025 is a new government in which everybody that's been elected, we have some idea of how they intend to conduct the affairs of the nation in the post-disclosure world. And that's tremendous. That's fabulous. And so we go from one of the worst elections of all time to maybe one of the most profound. And the only thing between those two options is the Senate Intel Committee, which is why I launched a month ago shiftstorm.org. Don't forget the F. Shiftstorm.org. When you go there, you will get very simple instructions. If you're one of the 1.5 billion members of Twitter, I don't care where on the planet you are, Mongolia, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. You can send messages to the three key people who will decide whether we have that hearing now or later or never. And that's Senator Schumer, Senator Warner, Senator Rubio. And the way you get that message to them is simple. It's called a tag tweet. So you go into tweet, and then you're going to give a message there that Senator Schumer, we really would like to have those hearings right away. There's witnesses ready to testify. We need to move on with this, whatever you want to write. Write 10 versions of it. Send all 10. But you start the message off with @Senator Schumer or whatever his handle is, or Rubio's handle, or Warner's handle. And when you do that, that message goes right into that senator's notification box. So if 50,000 messages are tag tweeted to them, all 50,000 turn up in that notification box. And so when the staffer who monitors the Twitter notification box, and I assure you there's one that does that, sees all these thousands of messages, they're going to call the senator and go, Senator, there's something going on here. You need to check Twitter. So that he goes on Twitter, goes to the notification box and starts scrolling through these thousands of messages saying, Senator, we want hearings. That's the shiftstorm. You can also send them emails, and there's information about that on the site as well. Don't send letters and do not call, right? That's what I'm doing. It's the best I can do, plus all these podcasts. Mm-hmm. And nothing but praise, no negatives. Thank you for the legislation. You're doing a fantastic job. By the way, we're talking one Republican and two Democrats. And then there's a second Republican involved, though he's not on the Intel Committee, but it's Mike Rounds, who helped Schumer put that legislation together. It's a bipartisan thing. right? So that's something that anybody on Twitter can do, even if you're not an American citizen. It's no problem. They can't tell. I mean, when they get that tweet in there with a message, they don't know you're in Mongolia. They're just getting that Twitter thing, right? Now, if they take the time to go check out your Twitter page, they may find out, oh, you're in Mongolia. It doesn't matter. Disclosure is about the entire planet. It's not an American thing. It just so happens that America is leading right now. We're the ones that can probably get it done, though we're not the only ones. And disclosure will affect every person on this planet. So feel free to participate in shiftstorm.org.
Okay. Well, I've noticed that you focused on the Senate, and I'm assuming not only because Schumer was there and he's the highest ranking person there, but if we looked at the House of Representatives, I mean, we'd be getting stonewalled, right? Because
No.
Mike Turner and Mike Rogers.
This is complex, but a quick accounting. As things started to get rolling in the Senate with the legislation, which is coming from the Senate Intel Committee, first Rubio, then Gillibrand, then Warner, and then ultimately Schumer rounds. But it's pretty much all Senate. The House is watching this. Now, there were a lot of briefings that took place in the Hill in terms of people being sent up there and meeting privately. But the report that came back in 2021, the June 25 report, went to the entire Congress. And so people in the House were picking up on this. I mean, they were following it. And it's very possible that some of them got some inside info, got tipped off or whatever. There were people in the House, and there's always been some, who know there's an ET presence. And I'm sure they were thinking, look, we're an important part of Congress. Just, we're the House, and we want to be involved in this. And so they inserted themselves. Now, that begins with pretty much they did some early briefings involved. Clearly, there were some briefings. I don't call them hearings, but there were some early briefings, a couple of briefings in the House. One of them, Andre Carson, and there was, but they just brought in a couple of staffers and they talked to him. But there was some House activity. But Bassett is the one that just said enough is enough, and he went out and said, "I'm taking this on." And he went on News Nation and Fox News and said, "There's an ET presence here, folks. We've got tech, folks, and we want to get to the truth," and so forth and so forth. I mean, he really hit it hard. And I'm sure a lot of other House members were paying very close attention to that to see what would happen next. And what happened next is Tim Bassett went from being a relatively unknown Tennessee Republican congressman from a district around Knoxville to a well-known public, even international figure, getting lots of praise and good press, being called in for interviews on CNN and elsewhere. Not just CNN, not just Fox and News Nation, and they're looking at that and going, that's nice, that's good. I could use some of that, which just reflects the fact that the stigma is virtually gone, though there's been a little blip lately. And so they jumped in, and so the House got in, and they're trying to decide what to do. I mean, it's not like you can just jump in and raise hell. I mean, they're trying to figure out how to engage it, and David Grush gave them the opening. So when Grush comes forward on June 5, they were obviously paying very close attention to that. And they figured out that because he was a whistleblower, he wasn't particularly interested in waiting around for the Senate Intel Committee to testify. He's ready to testify right away because he's a whistleblower and he's getting death threats. And so he wants to get this out. He wants to get on record. And so I think they obviously approached him and he said, fine, let's do a hearing. After that, it would have been very easy to get Graves and Fravor to make it 3 people, which is nice. They were basically wingmen to Grush. And they held a hearing on the 26th of July where they put Grush under oath. And at that point, the House made history. The Senate Intel Committee could have done it, but that was the first hearing for witnesses under oath since 1958. 68, rather. 55 years. That goes to the House. That goes to Bassett, right? And now they're involved. So the House is now involved. And then Bassett sets up the caucus, which is growing, a UAP caucus. They've gotten a briefing from the Inspector General. I'm sure they have other plans. So the House is now involved. But the road to the president's confirmation is going to go through the Senate Intel Committee, because that is the appropriate committee for this. But the House is not going to be completely left out. And so that is the circumstance. Now there's been a little blip. All right. And I predicted this. I knew it's like the red zone in football. There are teams that can move up and down the field like crazy, but the moment they get in the red zone, that's inside the 20-yard line, they can't get the ball in the end zone because the defense really fucks up, right?
Which is where we're at.
So we're in the red zone now, right? And so we're starting to get pushback. Those that are seeing the reality of disclosure now really looming are panicking and pushing back. But it's the way it's unfolding is fascinating and it's amazing. I'll try to give this to you quickly. Essentially, Chuck Schumer, in response to Grush, I mean, we saw what the House did in response to Grush, but what Schumer did in response to the Grush revelations happened before the House committee hearing. It was on July the 14th. In the 39 days between Grush's coming forward to Ross Coulthart and July the 14th, what had been going on, we didn't know it, is that Senator Schumer and Senator Mike Rounds of the Senate Armed Services Committee, a Republican, got together and put together an elaborate additional, at least 55-page addition to the modest language that was in play for the Senate UAP bill for the 2024 NDAA. There was some language up there. It wasn't profound, but it was some language. But they just said, I'm adding this 55 pages to it. And this came out of nowhere. And it was a bombshell. Yeah. It was just huge. Now, some people might not have thought that, but for me, it was huge. I mean, I was astounded. I couldn't believe it. And I was thrilled. Okay. So what did Schumer do? He basically said, here is the end game. I'm presenting it for you. This is how it should end. And for it to end, we need this legislation. We'd already had three tranches of legislation. AARO had been set up. The NASA had created a UFO study group. Other things were happening, but he said, "Now here is what else we need. This is the final package." And he announced what was going to be the UAP Disclosure Act. Note that name. And this is what that act was going to be. One, it was going to be the disclosure plan, full plan, that would ultimately bring forward from the government every single thing they know, have done about, studied, learned, tracked, whatever, all the files, everything regarding UAPs, ETs, in the government, into the public sector, and then archived. Not all at once, over time, but it would start right away. And some things would come out right away, other things a little later. Some things might be paused and asked to push back for a while, but that would be explained. But the full process was described. But that's not the real cool stuff. He said, these are the powers that we must legislate to ensure that happens. One, we must set up a UAP disclosure panel that's basically out of the White House, that will be made up of 9 individuals that will be appointed, and they describe how that would happen and what would the requirements be. We would have oversight of this process from certain members of certain key committees, which is, of course, the Congress's job is to oversight, and he would define that, right? Okay. And then he goes, and that's first. And then secondly, these individuals, the people that have oversight in the Congress, as well as the UAP panel, would have subpoena power to force, if necessary, anybody, anywhere, in any part of the military intelligence complex to speak to them. Not as a criminal matter or anything, but so look, we want to talk to you. And the person might say, well, I'm sorry, but I'm in a classified program. I can't talk to you. They say, oh, yes, you will. And so essentially the power to talk to anybody in the secret world, that power. Secondly, these individuals, the UAP panel, and the individuals that are assigned this role within the Congress will have the highest level of classification. So they have access to any program, no matter what the classification of that program, as needed. That's 3 big enchiladas. But that wasn't the real play. That wasn't the master chess move that was sheer genius. He added one more thing. And this bill will include and assert that the United States government has eminent domain over any non-human technology or non-human biologics, meaning the pilots, in the hands of any civilian company or civilian, which means that if we want it, we will take it, and you will have to give it. We might compensate you, sure, but if we want it, take it. If we don't want it, you can keep it. If we take it, we may come back to you and may work together, whatever, but we have eminent domain. And that landed like a bomb in the civilian world of government contractors. And it was sheer genius. And here's why. That announcement on July the 14th is going to be considered a very significant historical moment because of what it accomplished in just one statement. One, by asserting eminent domain on non-human tech, he just confirmed Grush.
Right.
The Senate Majority Leader has just said Grush, of course, is telling the truth, thus taking a whole lot of pressure off of Grush. He's confirmed it. Non-human tech, non-human biologics. Secondly, he had been staying out of the Senate Intel legislative process, but he's just stepped in. Now he's an ex officio member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, but he's not a member. And suddenly now he's basically saying to everybody, yeah, I totally support what they're doing. In case you were wondering, they're doing fine. I love it. So he supported the Intel Committee and all of its actions, which includes every member of the Intel Committee, Republican, Democrats, signing at least 2 letters. I think one to the White House, one to AARO, calling for this or calling for that. Now they're all on board. He just supported them. Okay, that's good. All right. 3, he just sent a message to the entire world. And by that, I don't mean the announcement he made on the 14th of July. This message, the way it works in our country is that when new legislation is added to a bill on a House or Senate side, it is posted on the House or Senate site, the legislative page. And so from July 14th forward, for several months, anybody in the world that could get to a computer could pull that page up and read that legislation. They had months to do it. So if you're working on some ET saucer, 54 floors under, I don't know, some base out in the middle of nowhere, as long as you've got access to the internet, you can go read that legislation and go, uh-oh, eminent domain. Whoa, right? He just sent that message everywhere. So regardless of what happened next, the message was sent to the world. And the 4th thing he accomplished ultimately was, for the first time ever since Roswell, he forced those who have maintained the truth embargo, supported the truth embargo, and planned to benefit from the truth embargo out of cover. They'd had it made. Yeah, had it made, no problem, totally secret. And the civilian contractors, they're secure from FOIA. They got it made. They're making money. They're getting paid. They're doing all this tech and learning stuff that they're going to eventually turn into huge money and profits for the shareholders. It's great. They got a wonderful life. And all of a sudden, wait a minute, the government wants eminent domain over all this cool stuff? Oh no. And so they had to react, and they did. Now, we didn't know it for weeks, but what was going on in the weeks following that July 14th announcement from Chuck Schumer is they started talking to their lobbyists, their intermediaries, whatever, and they basically told them and I'm talking about defense contractors now, stop that bill. Okay? We're not going to put up with that. You got to deal with that. Stop that bill. And I'm sure at the top of the list was that eminent domain has got to come out.
Oh,
if you can get the whole bill out, no problem. Okay? Stop that bill. Okay, now, what does that mean? How do they stop that bill? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. Every bill has to be reconciled between the House and the Senate. And obviously the language is on the Senate side, not on the House side. And so when that committee gets together, that conference committee gets together, if you've got people in that conference committee prepared to stop that bill, it'll stop. And so they needed to get that done. How do you do that? You need to approach powerful people who have the ability to persuade members of that committee to do whatever. How do you do that? Well, you get in touch with them and let them know your desires. Well, why would they agree to it?
Donors.
Here's where it gets down to the basics. Money. The defense contractors who are paid billions of dollars to work on our defense high-tech stuff, okay, it's all right, give back tens upon tens of millions of dollars as donations to campaigns of members of Congress. Tens of millions of dollars. And so all you do is you go to the right people and say, stop that bill or you can forget about those campaign donations. And who did they approach? It took a while, but we finally figured it out. The key people that they went to, one way or another, through intermediaries, were exactly who you would expect. Republican chair of the House Armed Services Committee, Mike Rogers, who gets lots of donations from defense contractors. Republican chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Turner, who gets lots of donations from defense contractors. And Mitch McConnell in the Senate, very powerful man, who gets donations from defense contractors. And so with the two gentlemen in the House, and I think they went to Mike Johnson too, the Senate Majority Leader. So with those people putting pressure on the House members of the conference committee, and with Mitchell putting pressure on the Senate members of the conference committee, at the behest of the defense contractors. And some people that just wanted it stopped for national security reasons, meaning it's not about money, it's about that we cannot have disclosure, it'll destroy the world, whatever. They got that bill gutted. Yeah, they got it gutted. And here's what they finally got. The fundamental bill remained. The disclosure kind of process was there, where the stuff comes from the secret world into the public world and so forth, but all of the powers were stripped. So there was no power to do it. So ultimately the decision was in the hands of the people that have it, right? So there was no power to do it, but the basis was there. They gutted it. And okay, then what? Okay, so here, and again, this is the point that I'm making. So at that point, once they got the bill gutted, the next thing that happens is that Senator Schumer and Mike Rounds go on the Senate floor to put some statements into the record. And for those that don't understand this, what they do is the cameras are set up and they present a statement to the cameras in the Senate. There may not be another single person in the Senate room, doesn't matter. It goes on the record. And speaking to the camera, Schumer talks about how disappointed he was that they took the powers out and kind of blamed the Republicans for that, but said, hey, no, we're going to keep fighting and so forth. Okay, good. All right. But as of that time, where were we? And where are we now? David Grush has confirmed that we have non-human technology, multiple crash vehicles and bodies. Senator Schumer has reconfirmed that we have non-human tech and bodies. And the defense contractors have reconfirmed that we have non-human technology and bodies. Because if they don't have some saucers and crash vehicles and bodies in their possession, they won't care and shouldn't care about eminent domain.
Exactly.
Be eminent. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So this is the master chess move that Schumer pulled off. Now we're running out of people in DC who haven't confirmed we have no one person at some point. The only person that hasn't confirmed it will be the president of the United States. And so that's where we are now. And here is the final piece to that genius move on the part of Schumer that some people may have thought about. And that's this. And I know he knows, is that if we get the hearings and the president is able to confirm the ET presence, fine. That's disclosure. We're in the post-disclosure world, right? In the week following that, as the whole world becomes aware that we're not alone, they already knew it, but now it's confirmed, and everybody's excited, and they're and they're running around and they're all excited, everything. Schumer and Rounds will resubmit the exact same bill as a standalone into the Senate, which will pass it immediately and then throw it over to the House. And the House is going to block it this time. The House is going to say, well, yeah, the ETs are here and everything, but we don't want it. No, they'll pass it. And he gets everything that they put in the first place. And they haven't lost any time. It's right after disclosure. And so all the structure's there. The disclosure plan is there. And we go forward. That's the genius move that he makes on July the 14th. And that's where we are right now.
Is there any chance at all, though, because of the eminent domain being such a hot topic, especially with the private contractors, because when that comes out, that's going to open up a can of worms, because, obviously some of these contractors got preferential treatment and it wasn't fairly bidded out. So do you think there's a chance that maybe they'll leave that one out and wait for another time to add that in, get maybe what victories they can, and just get momentum on their side? I mean, I think we already have momentum from what you've described, but is there any chance that maybe they would leave eminent domain out?
No, that's not. Well, at least not that point is not a matter, an issue. The defense contractors have a very huge, long-standing relationship with the government in terms of developing tech, weapons tech of every kind. Huge sums of money. So nobody is going to be shocked that certain defense contractors were assigned to work on ET tech. They assigned the ones that they could do the best work.
Right.
Classified the hell out of it, and off they went. And there's nothing, and so that's not a big deal. The moment disclosure happens, anybody that doubted that we didn't have ET tech in defense contractors' hands, that doubt will be gone. So the idea that defense contractors have ET tech will be absolutely established and completely known. Then the only question is, should the government have eminent domain on it? And I can assure you that in the post-disclosure world, combined with that circumstance, combine that with the vast social media world, billions of people able to express their opinions at will, the world's people are going to basically say, that tech belongs to the world. It certainly doesn't belong to just you. It belongs to the United States. It belongs to the world, whatever. And the idea that these companies are going to be able to literally appropriate them and make huge sums of money for their shareholders without and the governments are sitting there just hoping they can make the best of it. No. They're not going to support it. Eminent domain will be passed, and it will go through. And again, let me emphasize, just because the government exercises eminent domain and takes 8 crash vehicles back doesn't mean it can't then come back to these same companies and say, here's what we want to do, and joint ventures would be done, and the company would still benefit. It just means that the government will make that decision, not the defense contractor. And so it's not what all or one, all or nothing. And that's how it'll be presented. So I think eminent domain will be passed after disclosure.
One of my questions for you is, you mentioned AARO, and I don't remember the exact date that Sean Kirkpatrick is supposed to leave, and then they're going to bring in the next guy. But I'm sure you're paying attention. The Hill just wrote an article about it, but Dr. Kirkpatrick is just doing a scorched earth policy. I mean, he is on full attack mode. And I hate to try to figure out a person's motivation. Is he feel like that he's been labeled the bad guy and he's trying to rewrite history, or is he just vindictive? I mean, why do you think he's doing that, Steve?
Well, obviously the one to ask is him, but based upon what I know and what he said, my interpretation of this is fairly straightforward. First of all, I have empathy for Dr. Kirkpatrick, and he's not a bad guy, but he got a bad deal. there's only a couple of explanations for what just happened. Here is the most likely. Kirkpatrick was approached to run AARO. Kirkpatrick didn't know much about this subject. Most people that have positions in government at that level don't. You know, they could have made Richard Tolan the head of AARO. That would have been a whole different ballgame, but they couldn't do that. So they approach him. They say, "Look, we're setting up AARO, and its job is to start organizing the tracking and the whatever hell of this issue, so we can get the truth to the American people," so forth and so forth. And for whatever reason, he took the job. Unfortunately, it's clear he did not understand what in fact was going on. And like everybody else, he didn't reach out to people like me and some of my colleagues for consultation, because again, we're just believers and tinfoil hat wearers and so forth. What was going on and what is going on is this. All the legislation, creation of these various entities that ultimately end up as AARO, and the funding that went into it, and NASA doing its thing and setting up a group, and all the study group, and the briefings of Congress and the education of Congress, and all of this that you've seen happening, which is substantial, has nothing to do with finding out what this phenomena is. The government has known about this phenomena for 70 plus years. They've been researching this phenomena, studying this phenomena, re-engineering their craft, tracking them as at will if they want to. Right? We have massive programs dealing with this phenomena. We have massive amounts of gun camera footage of this phenomena. We have crash vehicles. We know exactly what it is, though we would certainly like to know more. That's what's going on. But wait a minute. If we know all this already, why are we doing all this stuff? And the answer is actually pretty simple. But I'm pretty sure Dr. Kirkpatrick did not figure it out. Namely, it's this. For some time, increasing numbers of people inside government have known that the truth embargo could not hold up much longer. It was amazing it lasted as long as it did. And it's going to come to an end. And by that, I mean the president's going to have to confirm it one way or another. Or, worst case scenario, he has to follow another major head of state who confirms it to the world first. And what does that mean? Well, if for whatever reason the president had to come out on Monday and confirm, yeah, there's an extraterrestrial presence, thank you, good luck. The country will be in flames, not in flames. The country will be stimulated. The press will go nuts. Information demands, questions will be pouring in from all over the place. Every possible briefing room connected to science and national security will be stuffed with press every day. And that happens, but we have no AARO, we have no legislation, we have no structure. The Congress hasn't had a decent briefing on this. It would be catastrophe. That can't happen. You've got to be ready for this. You've got to get things ahead of time in place, right? So this has all been about getting everything set up to deal with disclosure, right? But, and here's the catch, they couldn't tell you that. They couldn't come out and say, well, we need this legislation because there's ETs here and we're going to have to disclose it pretty soon. And so we need this legislation. They can't say that because then they've disclosed it. And so they have to play a game. They have to, it's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's basically mendacious. It's not, they're not doing the truth, but there is a reason why they're doing it this way. So AARO was not set up to find out about the phenomena. It was set up to exist ahead of disclosure. And so when he comes in to direct it, he's basically directing an entity that really hasn't got anything to do, and anything he does do is pretty much for show, but he doesn't know that. And so he's trying to do this, he's trying to do that. Maybe they're getting money, maybe they're not. And he's not seeing things the way it ought to be, and he hasn't figured it out yet. And so he's getting really frustrated. But it gets worse because this issue is still dragging on. And as a number of people have found out, I don't need to name names, that if you're somebody who has worked at high levels in government service or military service, and you step into this issue, you step into the world of social media. And people that work in positions like that don't deal with social media. They want nothing to do with social media at all. And suddenly, there they are. And so Sean Kirkpatrick suddenly becomes the focus of social media, and he is not handling it well because people will say anything on social media. Theory, speculation, conspiracy stuff, you name it. And he's probably reading it, or somebody's telling him about it, and that's driving him nuts. And this has happened frequently. It's not unusual. So he's just not a happy guy. And then it gets worse because halfway through his tenure, David Grush turns up and ultimately goes under oath to confirm that we have non-human tech and non-human bodies. And Sean Kirkpatrick is over there, the director of AARO. It was not set up to deal with non-human tech and non-human bodies. So anybody that calls up AARO and says, what about the non-human tech and non-human bodies? The phone is off the hook. He's in an impossible position. He can't address it, and yet he can't avoid it because we haven't gotten disclosure yet. It's awful. And essentially, Grush kind of makes a lie of the whole thing, and he's the director. He has to take the brunt of that. And I get it. In other words, they used him. But, they had a plan. If things had gone correctly, we would have gotten disclosure, and he might have ended up being the director of AARO in the post-disclosure world, and he would have got all the funding he wanted, and AARO would have been one hot ticket. But it didn't work out that way. And so he'd had enough, and he quits, and he's mad. He's already quit, by the way. We already have a temporary replacement, Phillips.
Okay, I didn't know we had that.
And because he's angry, he makes probably the biggest mistake of his life. And because he still hasn't figured it out, right? He sends an op piece to Scientific American, which has always been a little skittish on this issue and wrong. Okay, they'll have to answer for that. And it was a huge mistake, and he will regret it. He will regret it for the rest of his life. But it gets worse. He gives an interview, and maybe he'll give some more. He shouldn't. He should stay the hell out of any cameras. He should go quietly to his next job, make some money, enjoy life. But he gives an interview to Peter Bergen on CNN, on his podcast. Peter Bergen is less informed on this issue than Kirkpatrick. Peter Bergen doesn't know his arse from his elbow on this subject. And so he interviews him and then writes a piece up there, which was utterly, profoundly stupid. And in that piece, amongst other things, it's just this awful. He states this, meaning this, Bergen is writing, Bergen in German, there's another fellow co-wrote it. He's saying that Kirkpatrick told us this, and then he writes it. Kirkpatrick told us that AARO had investigated every government sighting all the way back, or event, whatever, back to 1947. Every one of them, which is impressive, I can say. Very impressive. In a year, they investigated every sighting on the way back, all the way back to Roswell. And they figured out what Roswell was. Oh, well, what was it, Sean? Roswell was a mogul balloon, and the bodies were crash test dummies dropped by the Air Force.
No, that happened years later.
5 years later. Anybody that knows the history of Roswell knows that is, of course, wrong. And the evidence and the work that has been done on that is readily available to everybody and anybody, but they're not going to read the works of my colleagues because, well, they don't have the credentials. And so that statement that he made, if Bergen got it right, and Bergen's conveying it to us, is going to sit in their craw for the rest of their lives. And so this is what has just happened. I'm not concerned. First of all, Dr. Kirkpatrick is going to take an absolute beating on the internet. It's going to be bad. It's going to go on for some time. And I advise him to lay low and just move on with your life, right? It's not your fault, really. You could have been more informed when you went on board AARO. They could have filled you in and said, look, here's the deal, Sean, we're going to have disclosure pretty soon. We need somebody to run this program while we get that together, but we need AARO because that's what people expect and it's appropriate. We need the structure. They didn't do that, I don't think. If they did that, we would be in the position he's in. And so that's my advice to him, but it's going to be rough for him, and I have nothing but empathy. Look, the truth embargo has made fools of a whole lot of government people. Believe me, and a lot of civilians, including me. The truth embargo, is bad news. It's a bad actor. It had some value in the early days, but eventually it simply needed to end. They couldn't end it. And so it ended up being a turd in the punch bowl, right? For years and decades. But now we're going to extract it from the punch bowl. But it's still making fools of people. And hopefully we'll get it done so that will stop. Because I can assure you, if we don't get disclosure soon, it's going to make fools of a whole lot of political candidates running for office this year, right? And making fools of candidates and fools of people in office is not helping this country move forward.
Let me kind of give you a little bit of my view of Kirkpatrick. I have a video I made right after the second hearing, and you'll hear that I literally made excuses for him. I really did. I thought he was going to be a good director and everything else. But my problem is, then he started lying. And maybe that was to cover himself, but he made assertions like he reached out to David Grush. David Grush has flat said that's a lie. And if he had reached out, there would be some kind of evidence to support it. And he could just bring that out and say, see, Grush is wrong here. But he never did. The other one that just came out recently, and you're probably aware of it, Steve, is that Kirkpatrick said that he never talked to anybody with firsthand knowledge. And Chris Mellon just wrote that he sent at least 3 people to him with firsthand knowledge. And so that's what kind of turned me off on Kirkpatrick. I can understand, and I agree with you 99% that he was in a tough position. I don't know what, I was trying to think of the word to describe it, but he was put in a position that was meant to do nothing. And I think of those old Western towns where they had those false fronts on the buildings and there was nothing behind them. That's pretty much what he inherited. But my problem is I don't mind him bending the truth, twisting the truth, if that's what his job was, but to come straight out and lie, and especially now that he's not even in it anymore, that's definitely changed my perspective of him. And like I said, remembering there's a video, there's a podcast I did where I clearly defended him. I thought, him and Gillibrand was setting him up for success, giving him all the tools he needed to make it work. But I've changed my opinion after he started lying. It's like, and even now he's out. Why doesn't he just go to his next job and move on?
He's mad. This is emotional. Yeah. And you're right. I forgot to mention that, because this supports my thesis, is that right after Grush testified, he attacked him. As I say, Grush put him in an impossible position, not intentionally, but he did. And in order to deflect people away from AARO, meaning don't come to me and start asking about, ET tech, he attacks Grush as a way to keep people away, meaning, well, if Grush is not telling the truth, there's no reason to bother Sean about this. So that was immediate. So he was in an impossible position, high profile. Everybody in the world was paying attention to him. And he had not experienced that in his life before. And so he is just really angry and distressed. So if he has lied, it's not the lie of a liar. It's really the mendacity of somebody who is in a very difficult position, very upset, grabbing for straws, and just trying to mitigate what he perceives as being serious damage to his legacy. And again, if he'd come to me, I think I could have given him some really good advice as how he could have handled it in such a way that it would have maintained his legacy. Because people like myself and many of my colleagues, we have this broader picture perspective on this. We also understand social media and so forth, but they don't reach out to us. We're again considered to be, off site, though that's improving. And there are people on the Hill, no question about it. But there's a lot of smart people in this field who don't have classifications, don't have GS-13 ratings that could be extremely helpful to the government as it tries to work through this process. So I would invite you to cut him slack. He lied, but again, it wasn't somebody who's doing something and they're not under stress, they're not upset, but they're lying in order to, quote, do their thing, right? And try to put something over on you. That is a whole nother type of lying. That's not what was happening with Dr. Kirkpatrick.
I guess maybe it was hard on me because I felt like, I defended him and thinking that he was doing the job, the way it was supposed to be. And maybe, like you said, maybe it's true. Maybe he went in there with that intention, but then realized that that wasn't really what the office was created for. Now, having said that, I want to get to one other thing on as far as AARO goes, and that is you pretty much laid out that AARO is there, but it's not really designed to do anything. And I think most people have figured that out, and especially the whistleblowers. And so, what do you think? Do you think they're bypassing AARO completely now and going straight to the Senate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that, and I say whistleblowers, it's all witnesses. I don't know by name any other whistleblower right now. That doesn't mean that some of them aren't in that mode, but witnesses are not the same thing as whistleblowers.
Right.
The witnesses are almost certainly going straight to the Senate Intel Committee. That's what I would do. If anything, that's probably even more likely. That's what you should do. I mean, simple. We don't know how many, but we think it's a substantial number. I don't have the inside information. Danny Sheehan may have a better sense of the number there, but it's more than enough to hold the hearings that will end this embargo, right? And change the world forever. And it will be nonpartisan, but the president who makes the announcement will be Democrat because he happens to be the one who's president, not because he's been the great champion for disclosure for the last 25 years. He hasn't. This is the way it is. And so, just think of the bigger history, think of the world issues, and get it done.
So distinguish the difference between a whistleblower and a witness. I think you would agree on this. David Grush was a whistleblower.
Right.
Fravor and Graves were witnesses.
That's right. Robert Salas, I'm pretty sure, does not think of himself as a whistleblower. Okay. But maybe he does if he does. But I've known him a long time. I haven't heard that. Whistleblower is not a very good place to be. I assure you. He's still getting death threats. Okay.
Right.
And so witnesses generally don't get death threats. Okay. Whistleblowers do. And so again, I encourage people, don't use that term unless it's absolutely established that a person is a whistleblower. Otherwise, they're a witness.
A witness, okay. The other one I wanted to bring up, and I mentioned it earlier, is this whole Wikigate conspiracy going on. And there's tons of evidence, and I kind of know some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes and where this is heading. And it's really going to be bad for the guerrilla skeptics and probably even for Wikipedia, with people I'm hearing are getting involved with this. But Rob got on, Matt Ford's show, The Good Trouble Show, and he clearly laid out the evidence showing how these, especially Lucky Louie, the overzealous skeptics, were getting on there and changing. And one that was just blew me away. It isn't like it's a big deal, but it's so petty. Is like the fact that Susan Burfict created Lou's page. She got his birth state wrong, and he tried numerous times to get it changed, and she wouldn't change it. And it's like, that's just so petty. Now, we know also with Corbell and Knapp that they took out the name Weaponized to make sure people wouldn't go to that site and be able to do it. So there's probably some legal action that's going to happen. But I'm curious, did you have any, I didn't know if your name was brought up in this. Is there anything been done to you on Wikipedia, or have you had an opportunity to even go look and see?
Kind of. Wikipedia, first of all, Wikipedia is the kingdom of the nerds. Mm-hmm. Having said that, Wikipedia is an amazing thing. I use it constantly. It's an enormous resource. All right. And the vast majority of the information on Wikipedia is just fine. All right. But unlike the Encyclopedia Britannica, you can't go in and edit the pages, right? And of course, the site, there are very high level people that contribute. I get it. So, but Wikipedia is a product of our time, and it's enormously valuable because it covers a vast significantly larger array of things in a encyclopedia kind of format that the Encyclopedia Americana or Britannica do not cover. All right. Okay, fine. Now, having said that, if the circumstances are right, Wikipedia can be a problem with respect to censorship and access. But it's generally something that's in that real controversial realm. And the UFOET issue is in that realm. And the Wikipedia is not responsible for the truth embargo. All of the people that are managing Wikipedia grown up knowing nothing but the truth embargo on this issue and the demeaning of the issue and the people and the stigma and all of that. And so it's not surprising that they reflect that in the editing and or the supervising of the content. As for me, 15 years ago, I had a page and I had gotten the page up and I was putting it up there and some changes were made that were wrong and I went and changed them. And then all of a sudden, one of the editors, whatever you call them, I forget what happened. And I sort of got irritated. I didn't realize the power that they have. And this editor blocked me. And 15 years later, I am still blocked. I cannot edit. I cannot put up a Wikipedia page or edit because I am blocked. Now, I could.
You created this page?
Yeah, I created the page. I could.
Can't comment on it. You can't edit. You have no control. You've been blocked.
No, the page is gone. It's also been pulled down. So okay. Now I could set up a new Wikipedia account with a new email. I could have done that anytime and started another page. But something in me said, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do my thing. And if there's going to be a Wikipedia page for Paradigm Research Group, well, it'll happen. Maybe somebody else will start one. I don't know. But there's something I didn't want to have to go around this guy. I'm also hoping maybe he'd go away. I haven't checked lately. Maybe he's gone, maybe the block. But when you can block somebody for 15 years, wow. that is, getting into kind of a gray area. So, yeah, I am familiar with this. But don't assume that all other areas of coverage of Wikipedia are being dealt with this way. That's not the case. The UAP issue in particular is a problematic area. And Wikipedia is an area, it's an interchange between the people and the issue that is very complex and subject to the truth embargo in a lot of ways. So I'm not shocked at it. But on the other hand, look at the reaction to it. In other words, we're living in a time now when you do something kind of inappropriate with respect to this issue, how fast does it take for the social media to come back at you? The next day. And so once again, we're winning, right? In the end, we win.
Yeah, it had to do with anything that's paranormal, everything that wouldn't be considered mainstream. But the thing about it is this group organized specifically to go in and change Wikipedia. And sure. That's to me the biggest part of the scandal is that this is a coordinated effort. Now, the other thing that my wife told me is Google will tend to send you to Wikipedia. And there used to be a way that you could opt out with like a negative or a minus or something like that. And that option is not there. At least she couldn't find it the last time. But so that's neither here nor there. It's raised some conspiracy issues, because a lot of people don't trust Google. And if Google's feeding people to Wikipedia, and like I said, I think you've done a good job clarifying that, if you get away from the paranormal or what they term the mainstream stuff, you're probably going to be somewhat safe. Although, the work's only as good as the editor, only as good as the person writing it. And I went into one on Wikipedia. I was writing for one of my messages, and I was looking up the Jonestown massacre, and I was shocked. It was the English version of Wikipedia, and they had it tied to some kind of conspiracy with Israel and the U.S. and Soviet missiles, that it was a cover for that. Now, I went back in a few days later, and it wasn't there, but it just absolutely kind of enraged me in a sense that all those people died senselessly, and they put this cover story over it, like this is the real reason, this is what really going on.
Yeah,
And I'm glad they finally caught that. But it was just like, how in the world could somebody say something so unfactual, has no bearing on the truth of the situation, and get away with it? And like I said, I did go back.
They didn't get away with it. It was removed. You
Eventually
see,
got caught.
that is the thing about Wikipedia. It can be edited, but then the editors can be corrected. It's kind of a, it is a, of course it's tightened up over the years, but it was essentially a public encyclopedia where almost anybody could add information or what have you. And the editors are modifying that. Now it's tighter than that, but that's what makes it unique. It's definitely not the Encyclopedia Britannica. Now, having said that, people need to know that there are non-Wikipedia editors, or there's a name they call, what do they call them? So I forget the name. Anyway, who can change things, but also there are people outside of Wikipedia that can go in and sometimes make some edits. And so they're not the same, right? It's one thing for a group of civilians to come together and as a cabal and go in and start screwing around with the UFO stuff for whatever reason. It's another thing for the editors to do it. Now, I do not know what extent Wikipedia editors were involved in this, but if they were, then that's definitely a little more serious. But it will get sorted out. All right, not too concerned.
These are editors, from my understanding, Steve. These are, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a difference between what you're saying, Wikipedia, but these people are actual editors. They're getting more and more power and more control. I don't understand exactly. Rob could explain it better than I can, but they're doing they're in, like Susan Burfict. They're taking over pages that have to do with the paranormal, and they are controlling those pages of what goes in. They're changing, making it more negative than positive. They're taking out titles for people. I don't know if you saw that or not, but it just doesn't seem like that should have happened, that there should be some kind of oversight to go in and say, and I've even heard it, whether it's true or not, that some of the guerrilla skeptics are upset with Lucky Louie because he brought this attention to the group now and stuff. But I don't know. I was just, like I said, it's just a little frustrated. It's going on right now. It's a big thing. And I can definitely tell you that there are things happening behind the scenes that they will definitely regret that they did it.
Let's be clear now. They already have control of the pages. Mm-hmm. They have control of these pages. They can do things to them. They already have that. The issue is that they're abusing that privilege. They're abusing that control. And so understand, they always have that ability. But if they're abusing it because of a bias, that needs to be fixed. And I wouldn't get too upset about this. Let me tell you, we're getting close. We're in the red zone. Remember I talked about the red zone? It's hard to get that ball in the end zone when you get that red zone, because the defense tightens up, and we're seeing some of that. It just means that we're close to the end zone, and just keep on moving forward, 2 yards at a time, and we'll get home. We'll get the touchdown.
Well, it's going to be one of my questions for you, is this concerted effort, because if people think maybe it comes from other places, but I think it fits so with the idea that the closer we get, the harder they're going to fight, especially those that don't want us to know. Anyway, just give you any more time you need if there's anything else, or do you feel like you've covered everything you want to cover? Let me ask this question before we close out. I'm not asking for a prediction. Obviously, I'm not asking for predictions. But what do you think? Where do you think it will be by the end of 2024? What will our process look like? Where will we be at? What will be the difference between where we are today versus where we are at the end of 2024? You've talked about July or something like that, and possible things that could happen. So, I'm not asking you to predict. I'm asking you to analyze and give me your best guess on where you think we'll be.
That again, there are 1,000 possibilities, because this is going to be a very tumultuous year. Anything can happen, and because of the world events, things are going to happen. I really can't go there. But here, what I can tell you is this is what can happen and should happen. And because it is essentially a logical extension of what's going on, it is somewhat predictive. Okay? There is a reason why this stuff should happen, because of what has come before. And what should happen is this. The Senate holds, and Intel holds a week's worth of hearings, extraordinary testimony. It will be televised. Untold millions of people will watch. It will blow up the truth embargo once and for all. The president will confirm. We'll be in the post-disclosure world. And the rest of 2024 will be a presidential election campaign. It will be a massive engagement of this issue by the media. In addition, there will be a lot of engagement of the issue by candidates. Other things will happen in the world as well. And then at the end of the year, in 2025, a year from now, a new government will take over in the United States. And one of their absolute priorities will be executing furthering the execution of the UAP Disclosure Act as passed in February of 2024, as submitted by Senator Chuck Schumer and Senator Mike Rounds, ensuring that process that is outlined in the original bill continues to move forward. And that's what can happen and what should happen, regardless of who blows up what, regardless of who invades what. None of this prevents the Senate from having that Senate Intel Committee from having a hearing. That is the best I can do. And if we don't get the hearing and we don't get disclosure, the only thing I can predict is this is going to be a god awful year. And at the end of it, we are not going to be in a good place.
It's really important. One thing I would say is to clarify this, because I know what you say and what people hear isn't always the same thing. But when you talk about a new government coming in, 2025, you're talking about an elected government. You're not talking about, all of a sudden we get disclosure, we're going to form, because I guarantee somebody's going to take your words and they're going to read something into it. But you're clearly talking
about
new
government simply means we elected a new set of members of Congress, a new set of the House, 33 new members of the Senate, some new governors, and the president, right? Whoever it is, that is a new government. A lot of the same people will be in it, but there will be others. That's all I mean by that. All right, pretty straightforward. Okay, let me wrap up with promo time. All right. I've already told you about the shiftstorm.org. Mm-hmm. Now, let me mention the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, which was launched in early November. It's making nice progress. It is a nonprofit based in Hollywood, founded by myself and Daniel Harari, who is a longtime Hollywood publicist. It is HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. Its fundamental mission statement is this. It doesn't make money, doesn't get pieces of deals. All it does is make it easier for people in the UAP, ET, disclosure, activists, research, journalists, movement, whatever, my colleagues, your colleagues, and the people who make films and television, even music, and the entertainment industry, which we label Hollywood, to find each other, to get together, cut deals, and make contact. They do the deals. Hollywood Disclosure Alliance doesn't. It's a networking nonprofit. And we've already got about 100 members. We hope to have 200 pretty soon. We will be soon raising money to conduct events and other things that will facilitate this process. And I think it's going to be, it's all pretty much geared to the post-disclosure world. It's not being done. Look, it is all about the post-disclosure world. The sooner people start getting together. So all of the Hollywood founding members, I think we got 46. These are people in the industry who have agreed to have their name and bio, their photo and bio up on the site as founding members. So they're acknowledging, hey, I'm in the business and I want to work on this issue. Call me. I'm your person. All right. And then the UAP founding members are letting them know, hey, we're here's our bio, here's what we're doing, and call us. But anybody else can go to that site and see some of these people and check in with them. They don't have to be a founding member. But we're just anything that facilitates the networking of these two worlds that have been separated by the truth embargo for virtually 70 years. right? Preventing the kinds of resources and production values that we would have loved to have had, but we still did the best we could. Anything that helps that happen and get those projects underway so that there is a much content already in production when we get disclosure and after disclosure, that is the role of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. So that's underway. Plus, I will be speaking at I'll be part of a panel as well as the disclosure luncheon at the Conscious Life Expo, LAX Hilton. Starts on Feb 9 at the LAX Hilton. I'll be there. Okay, come for the 3 days. About 20,000 people are expected. Then I will be speaking and running panels at the Contact in the Desert Conference at Indian Wells Resort, Renaissance Esmeralda. Once again, one of the most important and one of the largest, if not the largest UAP, pretty much UAP focused conference in the country. That is May 30 to June 3. To get your hotel room, you got to go through the website and you get a discount. But if I don't know when you buy your tickets is one thing, but you need to book your hotels now. If you want to be in that resort, book your rooms now. The most of the speaker list just went up. There'll be a few more added. There are negotiations. And so the website is contactinthedesert.com. Wow. This is a major event, and it could be a major celebration of what may happen between now and May 30. So I'll see you all there. Any more promos?
So Ron Janik, do you know him? Obviously,
Ron Jannings, of course, is running that conference.
Yeah, he'll be coming on in the next couple of weeks on the podcast. So I'm really excited about that. But that's, I'd heard briefly about it, but I'm starting to dig in a little bit deeper. And it's like, wow, I'm going to Roswell this year, but I can guarantee you if I wasn't going to Roswell, I'd be going to Contact in the Desert. I definitely would. And maybe I'll be able to do that next year.
I'm in contact with Roswell. I'm hoping they're going to invite me. I've offered my consulting services. We'll see. Technically, Roswell this year could be massive. I don't know to what extent the city council and those there are seeing what they're seeing happening and how they're interpreting it. But the potential is there for a pretty big turnout. Because obviously, if we were to get disclosure, who's not want to go to Roswell in July? I mean, that'll be 2024. That'll be the 67. What's the 70th anniversary was 2017. So this will be the 77th anniversary of Roswell. Lucky numbers. But I would definitely imagine a massive crowd and turn up. So I'm hoping I can be part of that. Hoping they'll give me a buzz, talk to me. And that's July. So, and there are other conferences that are being set up. If you go to my website, I'm about to update the conference section, listing all of the upcoming conferences. Been, behind on that. Sorry, but I'm going to do that very shortly. Also, again, the print media archive is a massive resource if you want to find out what's going on with 15,000 articles and almost way over 2,000 in just the last 14 months. If you just go read those articles, you will know more than 99.9% of the people on the planet because the media is actually covering it. And they're writing it all up. So everything that's happening, it's right there in these articles. And you read it and you got to know what's going on. They're not investigating it. You're not getting investigating pieces, but they are covering it legitimately. And there's almost no skepticism. There's no debunking. There's occasional debunking article, but it's almost all straight journalism. And it's not. Some people think that's normal. No, it's not. The journalists are on our side now, with a few exceptions. And major papers, major magazines are now covering it. Almost nobody is not covering it. So it has been legitimized in the journalism, and in spite of what's happened recently with all this kerfuffle and so forth, I assure you, some journalists are putting some stupid stuff up, putting up some dumb photos. That won't last very long. This is just a little blip. So print media archive on paradigmresearchgroup.org and follow me on Twitter, please, at Steve Bassett, or search out Paradigm Research Group. I'll take all the Twitter followers I can get. And if you go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, you can subscribe to my list. It's free. The subscription thing is up in the upper left corner. That's it. That's all my promos.
what I really love about having you on, Steve, is you're always positive. You're always looking forward. You're always, realizing and analyzing and saying, you know what, we've never been here before. And I really appreciate that, because you know what, there's a lot of negativity out there, especially in X. And so we need people like you. We need podcasts like this just to remind everyone where we really are and how close we are. And it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. So once again, Steve, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I want to thank you for your many, many years of dedication to trying to get us, out of this truth embargo, and to get us to not only disclosure, but confirmation. And I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your work.
I thank you. The Tasmanian devil back there thanks you. Until next time, my friend, ad astra.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye.